All right, I hope you guys took your plan B because you know how last time I said we had the biggest patch in TFT? Well, they actually beat themselves and made an even bigger one again. So if we look at the patch preview for the one for this week and take a look at the one for 11.10, we have like even more stuff that's been changing. So I don't know what's going on there. So if I had to guess, they are not happy with the state of the game, which is good because I always like teams that are trying to improve, but I feel like making like this many changes, like so many patches in a row, like they might as well just release a new set again. But let's not get too quick into the judgments. Let's see what they actually changed first. I did release a preview of this on my website on Sunday, but apparently they've been adding more stuff to it. And when I first read all the changes, like there were some I was very like conflicted about. But let's see what happens when we read everything and combine it all. Because you guys know changing one thing in one place affects everything else everywhere else. It's kind of like a complex system. So every little change has a lot of different consequences. It's kind of like the economy. It's like a lot of people, they're like, oh, like this method is bad, this method is good. But those types of changes, no matter what it is, it changes a lot more than just like one or two factors. It's kind of like a huge ripple effect. But let's just get right into the changes. So first up, we have the system changes. So I like this one the most. This is one that everyone can agree on. The items, while awesome that they doubled the amount of items in the game, very hard to remember what each item does. So they improved the user interface and the user experience for recipes. So now recipe hints are now extended. When you right click or tap an item to view the recipe hints, you can now hover over them and see the completed recipe to see what the full item does. This is especially useful for the shadow items because not even I remember what all of them do. Also, like for spatulas, I still don't know all the spatula components and like what they all make. Obviously, like I could throw up a cheat sheet and look at that, but it is nice to have it in game. And you have no mana, blue buff and very dark blue buff now pop off for champions with no mana. I actually haven't ran into this situation yet, but like if I were, I would not want that. So I'm glad that they made this change. ZZ-Rot Portal's item icon on PC now glows purple instead of green so that it doesn't look like a shadow item. All right, that's good changes, good changes. So far, 10 out of 10, but we got a long ways to go still. So now onto the shop rates. So shop rates are one of the most important factors in TFT because they have huge implications on leveling patterns. So right now they are saying reroll for your 2 cost 3 stars at level 6 and 3 cost 3 stars at level 7. All right, that's what we were doing before, but we weren't doing it that often. So I guess now we are going to be incentivized to do that more often. Giving clearer and stronger windows to hit 2 and 3 cost champions by differentiating shop rates at level 6 and 7. All right, so level 6, 35, 35, 25, 5, 0 is being changed from 35 to 40 for 2 costs, 25 to 30 for 3 costs, and fewer 1 cost units. They used to have 40% at level 6 for 2 cost units, but what ended up happening is that everyone started rerolling 2 costs. So I wonder why they made that big jump back again. It might have to do with Chosens, but if I remember correctly, I think sometime in set 3 they also had these odds. Do not quote me on that, but it will be interesting to see what type of 2-cost champions are going to be back into play. I've said this before, it seems that Riot is least fond of 2-cost carries because we always see 1-cost carries, we always see 3 costs, and then of course 4 costs are the main ones, and then legendaries are legendaries, but 2 costs always seem to be left by the wayside. And they're bringing them back. So start theory crafting. I'm guessing like Hecarim's going to be good. Brand's going to be good. Maybe even Victor. Who really knows? On level 7, they are changing the odds from 19, 35, 30, 15, and 1. And they are increasing the odds for 3 costs from 30 to 35 and lowering the chance of 2 costs from 35 to 30. So what they did not touch is level 8 legendary odds, which is 2%. And 2% might not seem that much, guys. For example, the effectiveness of condoms, a lot of people say they are 98% effective with spermicidal lube. So if we take that into consideration, and we might think that like 98% for birth control rate is pretty good, right? But we all know how often we hit the desired legendaries that we want on level 8 when playing TFT. So all things considered, is that form of birth control really that effective? I don't really know because I play TFT, so that is 100% effective. But like we hit legendaries pretty often on level 8, and I feel like that should be changed a little bit. I don't like this 1% at level 7 either. I get that having those like super high roll games are pretty fun, but 1% and 2% chances are always things that kind of rub me the wrong way because it's like, wow, this guy just hit Teemo on level 7. What am I supposed to do? But overall, these changes, this is going to be like the biggest change of the patch, despite there being like 50 billion other changes, because leveling odds just change the way you play, whereas all the other buffs and nerfs, they just change what champions you play. But this changes like the entire framework of like how we level and how we do all that. So I will be updating the leveling guide. So now onto the carousel shadow item rates. Spooky items are spooky fun, so we're going to give you more opportunities to play around with them. Okay, so there's going to be fewer times where there's only one shadow item on the carousel, fewer times that 2 items are on the carousel, but more for 3 shadow items. Now onto the loot orbs. Holy cow, they're actually doing like so many core changes. Nico starts feel like a high roll, but they can feel low, especially when you don't hit 2 and 3 costs in the shop, preventing you from exchanging the Nikos for gold right then and there. All right, so I just want to give you guys a backstory for why they're writing this. So a lot of streamers and a lot of pro players, they absolutely hate Nikos off the first neutral rounds. And I'm saying like absolutely hate. They like yell whenever they get it. They cry whenever they get it. They like scream. They do all that stuff. But Riot has this thing where they're like, oh, Nikos is really good. Just Nico your 2 and 3 costs. So that's what they're talking about here. Do you guys want to trust the pro players, or do you guys want to trust the developers on this one? That is up to you. I'm kind of indifferent about it. I never like super hated the Nikos recently. Like I think back in set 2 when they first came out, I did hate them a lot. But recently I stopped caring that much because it's a video game at the end of the day. But it's just something to think about. Like pro players absolutely hate getting Nikos, but the Riot devs, they say that it's like getting one of the best things ever if you get an early Nico. So just keep that in mind as you guys are reading this and why they're making this change. But decision-making buff all orbs. Slightly lowered the odds of getting gold and increased the odds of getting champions of equal value. I like this. They did add more decision-making, and I love getting champions because it gives you the option of like, oh, maybe I could go for this like Skirmisher start. Maybe I could go for like this weird start that I don't normally do. Maybe I could do like a Cavalier start. Like who knows, because you are getting a lot of different champions and maybe you don't normally buy them, but if you combine them with the champions in your shop, you could end up making a lot of cool early game team comps that you don't normally use. So I do like this change a lot. Props to Riot on that. And then Blue Orb, Nico plus 2 gold is an 8% chance, and now this is being changed to Nico plus 1 2-cost champion at 6% chance, or Nico and a 3-cost champ at 2% chance. So they are making Nico plus 2 gold a little less often, but it's still there, so I'm not really sure why they did this change. I feel like getting Nico plus 3 gold is just like a high roll now, and they still didn't solve the problem of getting rid of this, which a lot of people have been complaining about, but again, it's up to you guys. Like, let me know down in the comments. Are you on the side of a lot of the popular streamers, or are you on the side of the developers for this particular change? I'm kind of indifferent. I just really don't care. I find it fun either way because I feel like balance in TFT is less important than you think, because if you're playing a lot of games, you're going to get on average like the same starting hands as other players. So if you manage the like perceived bad starts better than the other players, you're going to be doing fine and you're going to be climbing. So now onto the traits. So the monstrosity is supposed to come in like a wrecking ball and bash your enemy's backline. Blah, blah, blah. Skirmishers, knights, 6 knights, and we're doing some armor and magic resist shred changes. So Abomination's monstrosity enrage cast time reduced by 25%. Abomination monstrosity base health is being buffed, and the bonus health per star level is also being buffed. It seems a little weird because I feel like Abominations are super good. But again, we have to read the whole patch before we decide if this change is really stupid or 400 IQ. They are also buffing the attack damage and the attack damage scaling. Forgotten attack and ability power is being nerfed at 9 Forgotten. That's weird. I've never heard someone be like, wow, I got 9 Forgotten. Absolutely busted. But maybe they changed the champions. Maybe all the Forgotten champions are buffed, and that is why they're making that change. Knight damage reduction. So this is being nerfed at 6 knights. So a lot of people complain about the Kayle comp. Like, honestly, Kayle comp is really strong because if you play it in low elo, you're never punished for like not hitting Kayle. So you just always have time to hit it. That's what I've seen, at least. Whenever I watch like high elo streamers, like no one ever goes Kayle. It's like very rare that they do. But when I watch like some of my friends play, like Kayle is absolutely dominating all those games. So like, I feel like there should be a balance between balancing for pro play and for the rest of the player base. It just depends on how you look at it. But I know they are doing like a big nerf to Kayle as well. So combining two big nerfs might be a little weird to me. Skirmisher shield 300 and 600 is being changed to 20 and 40% max health. A Spellweaver ability power is being reduced at 4 Spellweaver. Very well deserved. 4 Spellweaver was super strong. And the ability power scaling per cast is being reduced by around like 18% as well. And now let's go on to the champions. That's a lot of changes so far, but I kind of want to see all the champions before I say too much, because a lot of this is going to be dependent on other things that are going to be changing, as I mentioned before. So tier 1, our new stance on Balance Udyr is something between 11.9 and the buff we gave him in 11.10. So his Feral Instincts Tiger stance is being nerfed. So this is just a nerf to Skirmishers because you play Udyr as an item holder in the early game. So even though you sell him, it still is just like a flat nerf to Skirmishers. Vladimir transfusion damage is being buffed at all levels, so we have not seen too many Vlads. I think Vlad really only works in a 4 Renewer composition with like Lissandra reroll. Other than that, like, he's a solid early game unit, don't get me wrong, but you just always end up selling him. He's kind of like the default item holder for like some of the weird like AP and tanky items because he's in the front line. But as for like late game Vladimir compositions, I don't think there are any good ones apart from the Lissandra one that I mentioned before. So tier 2, nerfing the champion's ability power ratio is something we try to avoid, but Trundle's spell in combinations with the Dragon Slayer trait created a situation where you could one-shot, and yeah, Trundle, you guys all saw the Trundle clips. I linked a few of them in my comments section, so if you guys haven't seen those, like, check those out. But yeah, Trundle is absolutely nuts. LeBlanc, she's pretty strong. She got a lot more popular in the past couple of days, but she was always pretty good throughout the entirety of the last patch. So LeBlanc Ethereal Chain Stun duration is being changed from scaling from 1.5 to 2.5 to just a flat 2 seconds. LeBlanc Ethereal Chain damage is being nerfed at 2 and 3 star by around 18%. And then Sejuani Fury of the North bonus armor and magic resist is being increased at 1 and 2 star. But we do have to keep in mind they are doing like a magic resist and armor shred change, so we'll have to look into that. Soraka's max mana is being buffed. She will cast 10 mana faster now. Trundle's subjugate ability power ratio is being changed from 100% to 50%. And then his total subjugate stat steal duration is being increased to 8 seconds to compensate. So I'm glad they did some compensations. A lot of times when Riot does a patch, they nerf something 50 times. But I'm glad that they nerfed it bigly in one way and then buffed it a tiny bit in another way. That's a good balance. I hope they do this for a lot more things in the future. But for Skirmishers, it looks like they're just being completely gutted. But we'll have to stay tuned for that. So Varus Holy Arrow's Blessing on hit bonus damage is being nerfed at 3 star. So the Varus comp, it's called like the Golden Shower comp because he shoots down like golden arrows on everyone. It was pretty good. It's pretty good. I don't know if it's nerf worthy because not many people go for it, and when you do go for it, you kind of have to hit a 3-star Varus. However, since they are changing the leveling patterns where 2 costs will be more re-rollable and easier to hit for 3 stars, I get the nerf. Same for the LeBlanc changes. It's going to be much easier to hit the LeBlanc comp and the Varus comp with those leveling changes. Now going on to tier 3, like a true Spartan, Pantheon's been able to solo tank an entire army. So it's kind of weird. Pantheon is not a legionnaire. Have you guys ever thought about that yet? Even though like Rome's kind of like the legionary people, but I guess like if Pantheon is a Spartan, he's Greek, so I guess it doesn't make that much sense. But it's just one random thought I had. I always thought he would be a legionnaire. But Lulu Whimsy attack speed is being buffed. Why are they buffing Lulu? I guess it's only 3-star Lulu buff, so that's fine. But Lulu is like hidden OP whenever you're running an attack damage carry. For sure, like no doubt about that. So I'm glad that they didn't buff the 1 and 2 star and only the 3-star because no one really goes 3-star Lulu except for maybe Hellion reroll. Morgana health is being buffed and her starting mana is being buffed as well. Yeah, Morgana, she was good, but they did nerf her a little too much in the last patch. I still think she's okay, but I think this buff is nice and helpful. Pantheon Aegis assault damage duration is being, holy cow. So he's just not going to reduce as much damage anymore, which is fair because what he was doing before was completely ridiculous, but maybe now it's more manageable. I'm guessing in their playtest when they're testing this out, this was something that they found was fair, and I'm just going to trust them on that because it seems to make sense because Pantheon was absolutely broken in the last patch. Even at 1 star, he'd be tanking like 3-item Dravens like 2-star. Nidalee bonus damage on next attack after dodging and critting is now being buffed at all levels, so Nidalee reroll could come back. I actually really like Nidalee reroll. I think she's a really cool concept of a champion because she's jumping around, doing all these like big attacks, and she adds dodge into the game, which is kind of nice to see. Riven Blade of the Dawn attack damage bonus is being increased from 130% to 150% at 3-star. No one really plays 3-star Riven. I've hit it a bunch before because like no one goes Riven, so I always like get all the champions in the pool. It's pretty fun. We'll see if it actually does something. Maybe Yasuo found his long lost step sibling. We will just have to wait and see. So tier 4 cost carries have defined Reckoning thus far, no kidding. And just like my use of Thus, they've got to go. That being said, we're buffing the worst performing 4 cost by adding some joy to our sad boy and watering Daisy for a healthier growth. So again, like last patch, they nerfed Aphelios like 10 different ways and by like really big degrees. And they wondered why he wasn't being played in our current patch. Granted, in the past like 2 days, I have seen some Ranger comps come up, but it's not because of Aphelios. He's just added in because he's a Ranger, not because he's like the main carry of the composition. I mean, like if you're working out and you're getting like too big for your like your visual aesthetic or something like that, you don't chop your arm off. You just like stop eating for a few days or like slim down a little bit instead. It's like they literally just chopped his arm off in the last patch, and now they are trying to give him like maybe like a small steroid, which doesn't really regrow your arm, but we'll see what happens. Draven Spinning Axe's damage multiplier is being changed, and he is getting a 1 and 2-star nerf and a 3-star buff. So I've hit 3-star Draven I think like 4 times, and I've averaged like 4th place with him, which is pretty bad considering you have a 3-star Draven, right? So these changes are very necessary. I'm pretty sure I have a better win rate on 2-star Draven and even 1-star Draven than I do with 3-star Draven. Just like a fun fact in case you guys were curious. So this change, very, very welcome. His bonus damage also has the same type of buff where they buff his 3-star, but they don't touch the 1 and 2-star. All right, good changes to Draven. He wasn't like dominant in the last patch, but I think since they're gutting all the other comps that were strong, such as Vel'Koz and Jax, like nerfing him a tiny bit might bring him more in line with like how big they're nerfing everyone else. Ivern's Daisy now properly stars up with Ivern. Daisy's health will remain the same values, but now she gains bonus AD while starring up. And Daisy's shockwave damage and stun duration will now apply to the proper starred up values rather than just always using the 1-star values. So this is a buff to Ivern. It's just a bug that they were able to fix. Karma's Soul Flare damage is being buffed at 1 and 2-star, nerfed at 3-star. That makes sense. Karma's just like a weird champ right now. She's either in range to one-shot a lot of things or she just isn't. So it's kind of like a very hard thing to balance in my opinion. Jax's Empowered Strike bonus attack speed is being changed from 30 and 35% to 20 and 25 at 1 and 2-star, and then he's getting a buff at 3-star. All right, they're not destroying him. I like that. However, they are destroying all the other units in this comp, so it remains to be seen if skirmishers are actually still going to be a thing. I think they will be, just because Pantheon, I'm guessing 65% damage reduction is still really good. Trundle's still stealing a lot of stats, but maybe with all these other nerfs, it like might be like B tier or something like that. So now on to the next change. We have Mordekaiser Max Mana nerf. Completely deserved. Mordekaiser does way too much damage for how tanky he is. Vel'Koz Lifeform Disintegration Ray damage is being nerfed at 1 and 2-star. So you do have to keep in mind there is a Spellweaver nerf. It wasn't that big, it was like 18%, so that combined with another like 10% here, maybe that adds up to be quite a bit, but I feel like Vel'Koz was so strong that these changes are pretty fair in my opinion, unless one of the counter comps get buffed. LeBlanc did get buffed actually because it's easier to hit 2-stars now. So maybe those 3 things might push this down a lot, but I still think it's going to be playable just right off this first impression. So now onto tier 5s. TLDR, Darius buffed, Garen power neutral changes. So the last time they said power neutral, Aphelios happened. And that was not power neutral because he was the most played to the least played. But let's see how they actually did it. So Darius starting mana buff, 30 out of 100 to 40 out of 100. God's Wolf Carnage Armor Shred is being reduced from 70% to 50%. The Armor Shred duration is being reduced by 2 seconds. The healing per auto is being buffed, and the healing autos after cast is now changed to 2 autos. After that, the attack damage scaling is being buffed. So a lot of buffs and nerfs here. I think, yeah, I guess we should listen to this. Too long didn't read Darius buffed, but his utility is being nerfed. because a lot of people just use him for the armor shred whenever you play like a Draven comp or a Aphelios comp, for example. And then Garen, let's see how damage neutral this is. He's getting a mana buff. The magic resistance shred is being reduced, and then the duration is being reduced as well, same as the Darius changes. I guess this one might be power neutral. I feel like it's a little bit on the nerf side, but it's not that big of a deal in my opinion, because most teams, they have like either a static shiv or an ionic spark already to have magic resist shred already. So you're really only losing out on the tiny bit of magic resist, but gaining a little bit of damage on this buff. I still think it's leaning towards the nerf side. Heimerdinger upgrade damage is being increased at 1 and 2 star. I feel like Heimerdinger is a little too strong. Depends a lot on how the leveling changes affect how often people are able to get to level 9. That's mainly what we're going to need to look at here. If it's really difficult to get to level 9, then the buffs are very justified. If it's easier to get there, then this isn't going to make any sense at all. He's part of like the HIV comp, Heimerdinger, Ivern, and Volibear. It's kind of like the legendary trio that just like dominates everything if they are good in the meta. So Kayle, this is a nerf I was talking about, 700 to 500 health. This is a huge change, guys. This means Karma just like tickles her and Kayle's just dead. This means like an Aphelios AoE bullet might kill Kayle. Who really knows? I feel like this is a pretty big nerf. This is almost 30% health nerf, and then that plus the 6 night nerf. I don't know, Kayle seems pretty weak after that, so we will have to see, again, with the leveling patterns, like if it's easy to get Kayle or not. If people are able to fast 8 really easily, which I don't think they will be because they'll be punished more by the 2-star compositions. Maybe this nerf is justified, but it seems like a little bit much from me. Volibear starting mana is being buffed. All right, so HIV is being buffed a lot. I like that. That comp is really fun to play because Heimerdinger turrets are so fun. I got a 3-star Heimerdinger the other day. If you guys haven't checked that out yet, like, I'll try to remember to leave a card up here, but if I don't, just like ask me in the comments and I'll send you the link to the video. So items, similar to last patch, we're buffing some of the less utilized items. All right, that's good. And then like, let's just skip all this. Archangel staff tooltip now specifies that the ability power gain applies to the cast that grants the bonus ability power. I did not know this. I thought this only affected the subsequent casts. So it is good to know that. Like, maybe I'll build it more often now that I do know that. Archangel's staff mana ratio is also being buffed. I wonder if they're just like doing a minor buff to this for fun, because maybe now people might just build it more often because of this thing up here. I wonder if it actually was really that much weaker than all the other AP items. It's just very awkward to build. Luden's Echo had the same phenomenon happen to them where it's like a good item, but it just uses all the item components that you would want for different items on an ability power carry. So it's just very awkward to use. Archdemon Staff of Immortality mana ratio is being buffed from 300% to 350%. Riskthirster bonus attack speed duration is being increased. Deathblade and Caustic Deathblade starting stacks are increased as well. Hextech Gunblade of Immortality heal target is being changed from nearest ally with missing health to ally with lowest percent health. This is a pretty big buff because it means that it's going to heal the unit that's about to die the most instead of just the nearest ally with missing health. Final Whisper armor and magic resist shred is being buffed to 70%. Ooh, this is going to be a good item now. Before it was kind of useless. Now it's going to be probably pretty good, especially with the Garen and Darius changes. I always felt like this item would be really good in like a Draven Mordekaiser comp because Draven's doing physical, Mordekaiser's doing magic, so you can really make use of the dual penetration. I'm not going to make a joke about that there because I've already made enough of those types of jokes already. Redemption missing health is being changed from 25% to 20%. This is a nerf, and this is well deserved because Redemption is broken. Static Shift and Static Stiletto magic resist shred is being reduced to 50%. So is the only way to get 70% from Last Whisper now? I think that is the only way. And for magic resist, you are not able to get to 70% if I can recall correctly. So Vengeful Trapclaw is being reworked. This was like a really cool item on paper, just keep that in mind, but no one was building it, so they had to change it. When combat begins, a holder and all allies within one hex in the same row now gain a shield that blocks the first enemy ability. So you remove the stun, but you put the shields on other people. I feel like this is really good to put on your carries because imagine if you're running Vel'Koz and you don't want him to get interrupted, you're too lazy to build a QSS on him, so you put 3 damage items on him, and then you put a Vengeful Trapclaw right next to him. That's going to be a really good combo, and I'm actually looking forward to playing that. I feel like that is a big buff to Vel'Koz because now all the Thresh hooks that are thrown his way are going to be negated. Now onto the bug fixes. Bled will now properly receive start of combat effects before triggering his shield. Redemption's healing now shows up in the shields and healing combat recap. Stop hitting yourself, self-damage from shadow items no longer provides stacks to Titan's Resolve. Fix some loading screen tips that were not accurate with respect to Hyperroll. By the way, this was a cool combination that I did not see abused. If you built like a Shadow Rageblade or a Shadow IE and then built Titan's Resolve, that would have been a pretty cool combo to do, but I guess they removed that. The following champions' physical abilities no longer still deal their damage despite triggering Trap Claw. Aatrox, Aphelios, Jax, Callista, Set, and Varus. Zezirot, Voidspawn, corrupted by Viego will now have the proper stats and effects. Fixed a rare issue where units could benefit from the Invoker trait despite it not being active. Alright, that's a pretty big bug. I've never seen it, but with a vengeance, Callista's Pierce Spear can no longer fail to hit if she dies after casting. Fixed an issue where Trundle's Subjugate buff expiring while under the effect of an enemy Trundle's Subjugate debuff could result in the Trundle becoming unkillable for the remainder of combat. This bug I've seen before. Spawn Camper. Thresh will no longer continue pulling Revenant enemies who are reviving, and Thresh can now start gaining mana immediately after he stops pulling his target. And Extra Trolled fixed an issue where Trundle would sometimes not correctly lower his target's health when casting. Wow, I cannot believe we made it through that whole thing. It seems like we did it in a pretty decent amount of time as well. So overall, like, leveling changes, that's going to be the biggest thing ever. Maybe reroll 2 cost. Reroll LeBlanc is obviously a thing already. Reroll Varus, I want to do that more. I tried that comp recently and I had so much fun with it, but he just requires like a lot of weird units that we didn't typically play in the last patch. But obviously we're throwing last patch all out the window because this is an even bigger patch than last patch. Vladimir, I feel like he just isn't meant to be played in the late game, but they really want him to, so they'll have to maybe like, I feel like if they want to make Vladimir playable, they have to buff Lissandra. Abomination buff, I have no clue why they did this. So after reading the whole patch, like, we're going back to the Abominations now. Why did you buff this? Like, it is already the strongest thing ever in the early and mid game, and it just doesn't make sense. Like, nerf the early game if you want it to be played in the late game by buffing the late game, but it's just buffs all around, I guess. It doesn't really make too much sense to me, but if you guys know the reason why they did that, let me know down in the comments, because again, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And like, I've heard their reasoning before, still doesn't make any sense because it is broken in the early and mid game. Like, you always play Abominations and then you can fast 8 from there because you're never losing a game in stage 3. But I do like the item changes a lot, especially the buff to Hextech, Gunblade, and Immortality. I feel like that's like one of the coolest items. It's just so awkward to use that I feel like no one's actually going to use it, even if it actually was good on, like, statistically. The static shiv nerfs, I don't like these at all. I find that I feel like you want to encourage people building static shiv because people don't build it that often, in my opinion. In a magic damage composition, sure, you build it. When you're playing Hellions, sure, you build it. But every other composition, you can't just slam it to streak early game, which is what the original item was meant to do. And that's the use I've liked the most from it. So I wish they went back to that type of item, where it's kind of like a Luden's Echo, which was my actual favorite item in TFT. But it seems they want to make it like a anti-magic item, even though it's built out of a bow. Kayle, yeah, complete garbage. Vel'Koz, I think, is still playable. Jax, Trundle, and Pantheon got nerfed, and the Skirmisher buff overall got nerfed, I think. It's a little weird. It's a little weird. And Udyr got nerfed. Like, that's a lot of nerfs. None of them were super big, except for the Trundle and Pantheon ones, but, like, you have 2 medium nerfs and then, like, 3 small nerfs. That adds up to be a lot. Like, Skirmishers were very good, but towards the end of the patch, like, fewer and fewer people were playing them. Everyone was playing Vel'Koz instead, and then, like, even Assassins in the recent time. And there are even a lot of, like, hipster Draven players, but I can't even call them hipsters anymore because so many people are playing Draven now. It's mainly Mordekaiser, I think, which is another problem, but he only got, like, a very minor nerf. So, interesting to see Jax being completely gutted, but Mordekaiser kind of just gets a slap on the wrist. I feel like Mordekaiser was actually stronger because he was used in pretty much every composition because Dragon Slayer was so broken. But yeah, that is pretty much my thoughts on the patch. Oh yeah, nerf to 9 Forgotten. Like, show me a game where people went 9 Forgotten and completely dominated with them. Like, I've gotten 9 Forgotten before. It's really hard to get because you have to actually get to level 9. And it's not bad, but is it that much better than playing like 6 Forgotten plus 3 random traits that complement your team? I really don't think so. But let me know your thoughts about this whole patch in the comments below, because There was so much to cover. It's going to be much easier just to see this out in play tomorrow to make our first judgments, because there are just so many moving parts in TFT. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys haven't already, subscribe. And if you are already subscribed, maybe share this video with a friend who wants to get more serious about playing TFT. But apart from that, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff is all in the description below. And I will see you guys for the meta snapshot on Friday.